Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thank you for subscribing recently. Again, shout out to Scott with the Prog Corner, the Sunday Prog stream. You know, I haven't rewatched it, but it was fun to do that. I may do that as often as I can if they'll have me. I'll just be in the chat at least. So, anyway, continuing on with the S's. This is the S's part 2 of the vinyl A to Z collection. I'm getting through this. I mean, my prediction is I'll get through this by the end of the week. If not the end of this week, sometime early next week. So, finally put this to bed and move on. I can do like the vinyl tag and then the 10 albums that made my life that were significant, and then I can actually show the vinyl update and the collection updates. So, alright, the first one I have is Skeletons. Skeletons are college indie alternative rock band from the, I don't know when they started, the mid-2000s. This is their album Money. You know, I used to see this on the end cap at Cheapo frequently, but I know Radio K would play stuff from this, and I know I have some issues with how the vocalist sings into the mic. You can hear him swallowing sometimes, especially on the record that followed this. But I remember liking a lot of this, though it's been really since 2012, since probably the last record that I've listened to them. But I don't know if I'd call them prog exactly. I remember that band Dirty Projector they were compared to. With Dirty Projector are arguably a progressive or an art rock band of sorts too. They use a lot of like acoustic sections and odd, like minor keys. There's a couple other bands, Buke and Gase I kind of think of in that same. There's a lot of those indie bands from the 2000s and 2010s that took little bits of art rock and prog and combined it with acoustic elements and percussive elements. I guess you could say in some ways Phenomena did that the best. Are really my forte, but I don't know. Skeletons are a band I could go back for revisiting. I've had that issue with sometimes when singers are singing and you can hear them puckering and everything, it just distracts me. It's kind of like clipping cymbals, but this album I remember liking back the year it came out. I want to say it was 2008, but it was either, no, it was 2000? Yeah, it was 2008. I don't even know if they're a band anymore. I know that they had a money symbol on it on the very end. It was like Skeletons with the little dollar sign. It was supposed to be here. I know at points it was written that way on. So, all right, and I bought it. I don't remember. I bought that in the first couple of years I had vinyl. But anyway, so here's my one record from one of my favorite bands who are probably putting on a full-length album in the next, say, month or less. Finally, but this is their previous full-length. This is Small Leak Sink Ships from Portland, Oregon. Originally from I think Phoenix or Tucson, some part of Arizona, but this is 2017's The Golden Calf, which, I mean, to me it's not at the same level of Space Yourself and Remove Your Sandals, my last perfect record, the last record I rated at 5 stars, but I still love this record, and by most accounts from the fans, this is their favorite, and the band are really, really proud of this record. Dancing Devil's a favorite, Psychotic Opera. They have the math rock, they have the post rock, they have the, the kind of quirky elements and the vocal harmonies and the playfulness. It's not as dark lyrically, I suppose you could say, compared to some of the stuff on Face Yourself and Remove Your Sandals, but yeah, I mean, it's a record that I probably need to revisit more. When the new record comes out, I'll do a whole video on Small Leaks, but yeah. I have the one, 7-inch single, which, maybe we'll show my 7 inches after I do this in 1 or 2 videos. I remember showing it years ago, but yeah, I'm really excited for the new record, and that's Golden Calf. That's the last one. I'm thinking that the new record's not going to sound quite like that because it's going to be more electronic, like the last EP they put out the year after, Polaroid People, So okay, I've got 2 records. I think just 2 records from this band. Yes. And this is Soft Machine, and I've got Volume 2 and 3rd. And I'll admit that I would see this frequently at half-price books, and I'd never heard it, and so I just picked it up one day. I still have yet to hear it. I love 3rd. When I remember years ago, I was talking about, what albums I compared to Tales and Proper Deck for Oceans in structure, and I thought of, well, Godspeed You Black Emperors, Face Yourself, or Lift Your Skinny Fists Up to Heaven, Skinny Fist record, and someone said, no, this is the record that actually is more similar to Tales, and this actually came out maybe in the same year, maybe the year after. I think it was 72 or 73. Anyway, This is a great record. It's 4 pieces, like Tales from Traffic Oceans, between 18 and 20 minutes long. It delves more into like psychedelic rock and jazz than something like Tales does, though. But it surprised, like it's actually more similar to Godspeed, actually, in that, and maybe that was what the comparison was, and that's actually what it was, because that makes more sense, because it's more texture, atmospheric. Some of it's really, you're just kind of listening to a soundtrack of sorts. I mean, Facelift slightly all the time. Moon and June's the one people know this one best for. And when I saw Soft Machine live a few years ago at the Turf Club in St. Paul, they played parts of Moon and June. And Out Bloody Rages. I mean, it's not a record I'm going to listen to every day, but if I'm talking Soft Machine, this is my go-to still, of course. But this one, I'll admit I have, but I have yet to listen to. You know, Soft Machine had all these players and was part of the Canterbury scene and related to Gong. And, you know, I mean, they dove into jazz rock, psychedelic rock. You can tell they were fans of, like, King Crimson, and they were fans of Pink Floyd. But they were also jazz people, so... And that's the thing about the membership. You have all these different people that went in and out over the time. I know Alan Holdsworth was part of the band at one point. You know, so I've never dove like and become this religious Soft Machine fan. But when they came here, I was like, you know, I don't know if I have a chance to see them again. I want to see them at least once. And at this point, this is my sort of the early Soft Machines, the stuff I know the best. But anyway, those are the 2 Soft Machines albums I have. So the next one we've got a recent favorite, and she's kind of picked up the mantle for me from standpoint of like female artists that are doing prog of the last decade and change. This is Esperanza Spalding. I put this in the wrong order. I've got her. These are not her last 3 records, because she put out a record, I want to say in 2021, that like got a Grammy nomination. She got best known for becoming Best New Artist. That's, I've never heard of her name before then. And then she played on Janelle Monáe's record. But I've got her. The record from like I want to say it was 2016. It's the same year that I got into Bent Knee. I got into this toward the end of the year. This is Emily's D Plus Evolution, Esperanza Spalding's album. And then the experimental thing that she was going on Facebook telling people about. She was going to record the album live. You can watch it. It's going to be very write and record it. This was Exposure, which ultimately I can't say turned out as good as I thought it would. I thought it was really an interesting, unique way to do something, but the music itself didn't actually have the sort of the staying power that some of her other music did. Then there's the record that followed it, which, you know, this is the one I should have initially bought on vinyl instead of I pre-ordered this thing, so I was like, I want to be part of this. 12 Little Spells? Yeah. From 2018. I think this was 2017. So you put out like a record every year. Pretty sure this is 2019 actually. Was it? Maybe it was. We'll do the albums of the year coming up when I get to 2019 or 2018. I'll know. I'm pretty sure it was 2018 this record came up, but you know I may be wrong. This is if I'm choosing my favorites. This would probably be my favorite, but I think these 2 are like kind of neck and neck. Exposure is definitely, you know, I've got a couple of her CDs and the ones she won the Grammy for. But I mean, her style's range. You know, she's doing prog kind of stuff on this one. And this one's more, I say prog, but it's more varied. It's got more funk elements, and that's the thing is like there's more guitar on Emily's D Plus Evolution, and I don't know. I mean, the thing about she stylistically does pop, does funk, does R&B, does prog, does jazz, of course, and even does like blues and folk. She had Dan Israel, I forget the one of the like indie darling people in the studio with her while she was writing this sucker. So her influences are not directly just, oh, well, we got to have people that only do funk or do R&B or soul music when I play my music. No, she's taken in lots of different styles, and my interest and now lack of, for the most part, in Janelle Monáe, and even I would put Kimbra in that category to a lesser degree. And we don't really know what the future for Kimbra, because she's been doing like artwork and like poetry and stuff now. Esperanza's it. I've never seen her live. Now, I'm not following her religiously, but, you know, I mean, I probably could eventually become even more familiar. I'd like to see her work with Pat Metheny. I'd like to see her show up on a Pat Metheny album, but, because I think at heart she's still a jazz artist. See, and I love jazz, and here jazz gets sort of, forget Kamasi Washington. She's the best jazz artist of the last 15 years. The hipsters, of course, she was known to the hipsters when she won the Grammy, but, the hipsters didn't talk about this album nearly as much. Well, they did a little bit, but they didn't talk about 12 Little Spells, and even the last one. So I'm glad. I don't want the hipsters, taking over my artists like they have before. Anyway, those are my 3 Esperanza Spalding albums. And I should mention, though, that this pressing I've got of Emily's Deep Evolution is not perfect. There's like some fingerprints. So I may eventually try to get another copy, and I may part ways with this. I'm not sure. Anyway, I think one of these I had an issue with, and I remember I bought it at Barely Brothers, about 6 months ago, or maybe a little older than that, a little longer ago than that. So all right, I've got this. I got $4 I paid for it. I'm surprised. This is Speedway Boulevard, and the most notable thing about this is an album that came out in 1980. It's for the most part like a fusion thing, but I've sampled it. I have not listened to the whole thing. But the biggest thing is it has Jordan Rudess, who, he just plays keyboards, but it was one of, this is, almost 20 years before he joined Dream Theater, and, whatever, was with the Dregs after that, but, he goes back, because he's older than the Dream Theater guys, goes back to the 70s, but yeah, you can see him in the middle there, but, I may be sleeping on this. I remember I interviewed him on the radio, on KFA Radio, back in early 2000s, and he talked about Speedway Boulevard. I asked him about it and everything. I think this might have been the first album he actually played on. He did other stuff before that. He's classically trained, and there's some footage of him, I think, from the 70s that got put on YouTube many years ago. So, I've only got one record from this band, and as I've come to learn, unless they do a repressing, I was talking with Nathan on Shuffle on one of his videos about this band. But this is Spock's Beard. I do have V, or 5, the album from the year 2000. And, of course, this has The Great Nothing, which it is, among other things, about Kevin Gilbert. And it's probably, a lot of people's takes, the best Spock's Beard track. It's the longest track, 27 minutes or whatever. I think it is, at least among the Neil stuff. But, yeah, I mean, it's a great record. The rest of it's really good, too. At the end of the day is excellent. All on Sunday is a pop track, but it works. Thoughts Part 2, Revelation. I mean, is it my favorite Spock's Beard album? I split hairs. I mean, Push to stuff, I kind of go to it, but I don't know. They're pretty consistent. They had a 6-album run, kind of like whatever Renaissance and Zeppelin did. The Neil Morse Spock's Beard, especially, it even came with an extra copy of the CD. But yeah, someday I'd like to get the other Neil Morse Spock's Beard albums, especially if I'm not having to take out a second mortgage. But hope they repress them, because they sell. Some of them are a couple $100 or more on Discogs and eBay. And I know I bought them. It came out, but I was, I'm trying to buy vinyl, even pre-order. That thing probably cost me, I don't know. It cost me. I probably paid $50 for it, 40 or 50. But if you're gonna buy the whole, they're reissuing every record. You're talking spending $300-400. I like Spock's Beard, but I don't necessarily need to, I need to pay my bills, So. Alright, so next I have, which is a very limited collection, surprisingly. Because I see them somewhat regularly, my Bruce Springsteen collection. So I have the first 2 records, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, which I think these came out the same year, 73. And then Wild and the Innocent and the East Street Shuffle. Now, granted, putting 2 albums out in a year was a commonplace, especially in the 70s. Yep, that was 73 as well. I want to see if... David Sanchez is on this. So I was showing the Sanchez album in the last video. You can see that. He's there. He's like in the middle. I don't know which one's him. Springsteen's the second one from would be the right. But anyway, maybe the guy in the middle. But yeah, these 2 records are great. And I've also got Darkness on the Edge of Town, which is another album I liked. And ironically, though, I thought I bought it. Born to Run's my favorite Springsteen record. I got into Bruce Springsteen, I knew his music before that. I grew up in the 80s, so I knew, Born in the USA, the title track, and Dance in the Dark, which was filmed, the shoot with Courtney Cox was filmed actually in St. Paul at the Civic Center. But I didn't really start diving into more of his music. I knew some of the radio songs until the summer of '95, right after I got into Marillion and Dream Theater, oddly enough. Van Halen and Springsteen I bought all their albums that on CD. I got them used for the most part, and I got into all of them. Especially, I concluded, especially the '70s. I like some of the '80s stuff. You know, Tom Joad, and I do like The Rising, which I listened to for the first time a few years ago. But I still kind of, my heart's with the early stuff. I mean, on Darkness on the Edge of Town, which came out in '78, Candy's Room is the biggest, you know, go-to on this record. Love the guitar riff on that and the sort of crescendo. Badlands, though, is catchy and memorable. A radio song, The Promised Land, Prove It All Night, Racing in the Street. There's a lot of really good tracks on this record. These first two, my go-tos would be, the first one, of course, a bunch of bands covered, you know, did covers of songs, but Blinded by the Light, you know, his version isn't as good as Manfred Mann, but I didn't even realize until I bought this that was a cover. I want to say there's one other song that ended up getting Because the Night. No, maybe I'm thinking of a different album. But Spirit in the Night, For You, and Growing Up, for the most part. Then, you know, The Wild and the Innocent, between the two of them, I would probably put this one slightly above that. It has Rosalita, that's the most well-known track on here. When I was getting into Springsteen, I didn't even know that song growing up, and I was like, oh man, this is a banger. Didn't say that, of course, but this is a fantastic, addictive, earwormy track. Wild Billy's Circus Story, Kitty's Back, the E Street Shuffle. I know there's a lot of really jazzy parts between horns and keyboards that, you know, Springsteen, you know, it wasn't prog, but he kind of did some progressive stuff. And, you know, especially with Jungle Land on Born to Run. But I need to get Born to Run, probably eventually get The River, and maybe Born in the USA, and for the right price, because every one of those albums has songs I like. Anyway, moving on, St. Vincent. We have one record, and one record I really enjoy from St. Vincent, the debut album, Marry Me. You know, Annie Haslam singing with King Crimson, you know, slightly. This has Now, Paris is Burning, Your Lips Are Red is terrific. That is very Crimson-y. Landmines, dreamy. I loved her when she first came out. Loved her band. And, you know, suddenly she started to do different things. Of course, she played with Polyphonic Spree and Sufjan Stevens. And I just kind of, the experiments didn't bug me. And then she became this hipster darling. And I just was like, she didn't need my support. I met her, got her autograph. I have a 7-inch of her first single. It's the Marry Me single. So this still remains the one record I enjoy. I mean, I like a few songs on some of the other records, but as a whole, even though she worked with David Byrne, the Talking Heads, who I like the Talking Heads. I don't love them. I've never been blown away by them. I know they're kind of progressive in some ways with, you know, using odd rhythms and percussion and everything like that. But no, I mean, St. Vincent, I don't know. Maybe someday the switch will go back on with her and I'll appreciate her more. So I've only got 2 releases, one real proper record from Sting, and my Police collection is somewhat, you know, got some holes in it. So is Sting, because I know several of his records. I've got Nothing Like the Sun, and then I've got this 4-track 12-inch EP, which is called Dancing. What's it called? Dancing? No, If You Could Love Somebody, Set Them Free. So it's like a single, really, not really an EP. Yeah, it's just different versions. It's got Another Day. That's the song that Dream Theater did. Not the song. This is like from 87, 85. It's not Kevin's. Kevin Gilbert has a song called Another Day also. But yeah, so this was probably a single on. I thought his debut album was Dream of the Blue Turtles. This is 87. And this says 85. So maybe this is from Dream of the Blue Turtles. But interesting how the artwork is kind of similar, being white. But yeah, this is his second album, and then of course he did Soul Cages after this. He does a cover of Little Wing from Jimi Hendrix on this. But Fragile, Englishmen in New York is a terrific track. That lyric just speaks to me. You know, be yourself no matter what they say. That's one of my favorite lines of any song ever. You know, be still my beating heart. Is that actually a track in here? And like the roster of people on here. Andy Summers, you know, after they'd broken up, he guest starred on 2 songs here. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits, Eric Clapton. Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, Be My Stilton Heart. We'll Be Together. You know. Yeah, I mean, it's... If I was rating the Sting records, it's not my top record at all. But I like the first 4 records. After he started doing like the loot stuff, I wasn't into it. I did stuff, my second concert ever was seeing him on the, Some 10 Sumner's Tales. But basically his debut album, Dream of the Blue Turtles through 10 Sumner's, every record has songs I like, and I just don't have them. I mean, am I going to spend 20, 30, 40 bucks for a Sting record? Probably not. If I can find it for an affordable price, like 5 or 10 bucks, yeah, maybe. But, it's like you get so many records and, you got to get rid of other ones, Get rid of this one, add this one, the number you have is the same. So I've only got one record from this band, and, the band that I've wanted to get more into, and I bought this just sort of on a whim. This is Squeeze's album, Così fan tutti frutti, which is an interesting title. I don't know if this has their big hit. This is from early 80s. 85, actually mid-80s. No, because the song I'm thinking of, Tempted by the fruit of the nose. I forget the name. Maybe it's called Tempted. Because I love Jellyfish and like Toy Matinee, there's a guy who's on KFA radio always said that Squeeze would be a band that I would be able to get more into, and I probably could, so I bought this, and I won't ever go drinking again. The last track. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the most well-known Squeeze record. It's an interesting cover with the cake, and the whatever. It's like a fan, one of those little handheld fans. But yeah, I mean, Squeeze is a band like many bands, like 10cc, and that I still have meant to like spend more time with. Even like the Supertramp catalog from an in-depth standpoint. So speaking of S's, so I've got the one debut album from Squid. I showed this when I got this a little over like almost 2 years ago. Bright Green Field. I do not have the new record yet. I like the new record, although I'm not as obsessed with it as I hoped. But this record, when I heard it, it was like whatever, it was almost a year after it come out. I bought this in like January of 22. It pretty much floored me. I mean, the Brixton bands, this is the only one that I really have a lot of confidence in. I'm seeing them live in February finally. Paddling is my favorite track. Narrator's great though. It's prog, it's post-punk, it's very kind of experimental, there's horns. The singer kind of, he does the yelling like that, kind of, but he kind of, his vocals, it's a little bit like Tyane Braxton from Battles. His vocals kind of fit the music and makes them unique, and they kind of grow on you. I mean, some vocals will never grow on me. Probably Anthony Green and Tom York I'm never going to like, and a couple other singers. Ben Gibbard, probably not. But I find that, the music is so good, if I can just get past the vocals, Minus the Bear was that way a little bit for me, because I thought the vocals were just mediocre, and then I was like, the music's so damn good. And that's the largest case with Squid and with Bright Green Field. So this album came out in 2021. One of my favorite records of 21. You'll be seeing that in the 21 list, I'm sure. So, let's see. Chris Squire, of course. He only has one record. I have multiple copies of this, I might, on CD, but I only got the one copy on vinyl, unlike Elias and Hillo. But yeah, it's a classic album among Yes fans in the Yes canon. It's like the missing Yes album. I mean, it's Chris doing all the lead vocals, of course, but it's the fantastic arrangements. It's not underrated, it's not overrated, it's totally properly rated, I think. I go back and forth between I like this and Elias more, but the debut albums from the Yes members, these are the top two. And Hold Out Your Hand. What's the other one that I always think of for this record? Mel Collins of King Crimson, Patrick Moraz, of course, he worked with again. Well, this is around the time Moraz was maybe still a member of Yes. Silently Falling. But, I mean, it sounds like Yes. That's part of it, is like, even though it doesn't have Steve Howe, it doesn't have Alan White, it still sounds like music that Yes could have written and recorded if you just had him take the lead vocals. But yeah, from 75, it was 75. Fish Out of Water, of course, from Chris Squire. I don't know if that's a first pressing or second. It's pretty beaten up. So I've only got one record from this band, even though I think I have only one of their albums on CD, but it's not this one. This is Citadel from Starcastle. The band that sounds a lot like Yes, and, well, I don't think I've become attached to them. I appreciate them, unlike some bands that are quote-unquote clones. This is Citadel, though. I don't know if this was... I think this was their first album. I have their first album on CD, and that would be the one I would lean toward, but it was $2. I figured you don't see Starcastle that much, even though this is a major label. Epic. But anyway, 1977, Citadel from Starcastle. An album that I, probably never. I've only I only really think I have. Maybe I bought more than one. The big deal with Starcastle was when I saw Dream Theater, Deep Purple, and ELP back in '98. Some guy that had never heard Dream Theater said this. Dream Theater sounds like Starcastle. I'd never heard the name. Then my friend of mine, Creighton, talked about, oh yeah, I love Starcastle. So we played Starcastle on the radio. So I probably played music on my radio show on KFAI that I'd never even heard before because they were playing. Because we had a group of people playing different music. I wanted to share the love and the airtime. So I only have one album from this artist. This is Cat Stevens. This album I got at Record Store Day a couple years ago. The Harold and Maude soundtrack. It's fantastic. And the weird thing about this was, for the longest time, you could not find this music. I don't know if the soundtrack ever got issued or went out of print or something. Because I remember Mike Portnoy talking about he loved Harold and Maude. He even used it in a lyric in Best of Times about him and his dad saw it at the Dream Theater in Monterey, California, or Carmel. But he talked about loving the music from Cat Stevens from this, but then I wanted to find it, and I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere, and, couldn't buy the CD. It was out of print, and so, but yeah, it's great that this was issued. I mean, I have not seen Harold and Maude in a long time. It's a movie I do really enjoy. It's one of my favorite because my early 70s lists aren't that high. I haven't done my movie list, but, yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to this since, but, it's Cat Stevens. I know some of the Cat Stevens singles, the songs he got known for, not known as something else. The other noteworthy thing about Cat Stevens is he was on an airplane after he changed his name, because he's got a Muslim name now, with the guys from Marillion. He got stopped because I don't know if he had identification problems, or maybe he had something on board with him. They found something in his bag, pot or something. I don't know. So moving on to another Stevens. This is Sufjan Stevens, who I have more CDs from, but this is the only vinyl I have, and this is my favorite album, The Age of Odds from Sufjan Stevens, which has the epic Impossible Soul, 25 minutes, very in movements, and it crescendos well at the very end. It's not as chamber rock as a lot of Sufjan's. It's more, I don't know how to really describe it. They do use horns though, but it's proggy. It's really him doing his overtly proggy. I love the Illinois record, some of Michigan. Some of his music is hit and miss. Although I'll admit that I revisited Impossible Soul about 9 months ago, and I was sort of I still love it, but I don't love it as much as I once did. The rest of the record is good though. The title track, Vesuvius. The weird thing is he put out this came out in 2010. He put out another record the same year, but it was an EP that was 45 or 50 minutes long. Age of something people, something like that, which sounded more of the traditional chamber folk stuff he had been doing. Of course, he was trying to do the whole States project, and that was way too ambitious. But Illinois, if I'm going to get any more Sufjan Stevens, Illinois would be the one I would seek out. But this is still my #1 record. A lot of people I don't care for Carrie Lowell. Man, it's depressing. Listen to that. And I don't like a lot of when Sufjan Stevens just does straight up singer-songwriter with a guitar. I'm not. I mean, I don't mind his voice, but as a whole, no. I have to have the extra instruments, the extra arrangements, synthesizers, something else. So the next one is another artist that I have a number of holes in them. This is Styx. I have some of the early proggy Styx. I have Man of Miracles from '74, and then I have 2 copies of this. This is a compilation of some kind, which came out. This was early Styx too. No, actually, this came out in '80. I figured, but it's really the early stuff that's interesting, because it has Lady, You Need Love, Little Fugen G, Earl of Roseland, which is a great track. Yeah, but this is called. This is just this is actually Lady. My bad. But I believe this is a compilation that was released on RCA, and I've got 2 copies of it. So then I've just got a picture disc, I never listened to, of Pieces of 8, which I got. Yeah, I was like, how much did I pay for this sucker? I think it was $6. I don't know. Great album, Pieces of 8. I mean, I don't have. I could go for picking up all the '70s Styx, pretty much, that I don't have. I already have Man of Miracles. Man of Miracles. Actually, this doesn't have as many. Golden Lark is one of the ones I know. Because I know Styx 2, of course, has Lady, but Grove of Eglantine, and there's a few other tracks I've always thought of for the early Styx, and they were doing Prog. And then The Serpent is Rising, I know of. I had a friend I used to talk to through the old Metalhead directory in the 90s, through Metal Edge, that was obsessed with Styx, and that was when I was getting, I bought most of their albums on CD and cassette. I have like 3 live albums or 2 compilations and a live. I have way too many Styx CDs, which I probably should get rid of, but I love those 70s albums especially. And then I did buy Edge of the Century. I remember getting it through BMG, which has Show Me the Way, of course. Which I think it had the Glenn Burtnick, who was with Judas Priest, maybe? Because I know that, they had lineup changes and everything like that. But so moving on, now we have Subterranean Masquerade. I don't have the latest album, but I have the 2 previous ones. I have 2 copies of this, too. The Great Bazaar, which, again, like the Styx compilation, will go in some sort of contest, maybe. And then I have that was in 2015. And I have 2017's Vagabond, which I prefer the Great Bazaar. It has Paul Coeur. I don't think Paul Coeur was even on this one. He's not on the last one. It's the singer from, say, Green Carnation. But I love Subterranean Masquerade, although I still favor the first record, and then that EP, Temporary Psychotic State, Suspended Animation Dream. Those are my favorite, but this was a great comeback. I have a single of Home. I got a promo, actually. I won in a contest. Been in contact with Tomer Pink, the Israeli musician who's really the heart and soul of Subterranean Masquerade. But, it's progressive metal, folk, it's like Jethro Tull rock, like death rock. Progressive death rock. I mean, there's Jethro Tullism. They use like flute and saxophone stuff. They're a great band. I mean, I think people blew this album off. I think from the 2010s. It's one of the better progressive metal albums, if you want to call it. Tour Diary is a favorite on this. Early Morning Mantra, Blanket of Longing. But yeah, the last record I liked. I just kind of feel like they sound a lot like Orphan Land now, with like the Middle Eastern elements and kind of treading water. I mean, this is like a follow-up. It's really this album. You play a song from Vagabond and a song from the last record, I would probably not be able to tell which one is which at this point. But both of them were on my list for that year, though. So all right. I showed this, like a month and a half ago when I picked this up at that garage sale. This is Donna Summer's Love to Love You, Baby, which is that long piece. Which, having listened to this, I'm sort of just okay on this, but I wanted to pick up something, and we'd just seen the Donna Summer documentary. I think I got it. There's 1 or 2 other records I need to find from her, but yeah, this is, I think it might be a first pressing too, on Oasis, Casablanca. Anyway, this came out, what year? 75, yeah. She would, I need to get the Giorgio Moroder, that was when she was starting to work with him, but she worked with him more extensively on some of the others, so. Alright, so I've got, 2 albums from this band? This is a local Minnesota band. I think it's just 2. Maybe it's 3. No, it's not. This is Sussman Lawrence, which Peter, I always forget his last name. Peter, which I showed him earlier, Himmelman. The story with Peter Himmelman was, he was hanging out with, he played in band stuff, and Alexander O'Neill, who got known for the Minneapolis Sound, kind of with The Time, and Prince. But Peter Himmelman, the guys in Sussman Lawrence knew Alexander O'Neill. I think they may have been his backing band at one point. But musically, Sussman Lawrence is kind of like Elvis Costello. But they're from Minneapolis, so I have a personal bias. I also know Peter Himmelman actually dated a friend of mine, mother, at one point, back in the 70s, or maybe it was early 80s. But yeah, I mean, this is one of Hail to the Modern Hero and Pop City. So, not albums I'm going to reach for regularly, but, I've never seen Peter Himmelman live. If I ever get the chance, I would probably want to revisit some of this stuff. My friends that are into prog stuff locally love Sussman Lawrence. So, anyway. So the last 2 in the S's, we're finally done with the S's. I have System of a Down, my 2 favorite System of a Down albums. I would go for getting a couple of the others. Mesmerize, which is my favorite, and Toxicity. Toxicity came out in like 2001, I think. Mesmerize was the first of 2 records that came out in 2005. I was Hypnotize, of course, came out after it. I kind of look at Hypnotize as like B-sides from Mesmerize, but It's their fun records. I saw them with the Mars Volta. That was around the time I just pretty much bought into liking them. A friend of mine put one of their songs on a mix many years before that, but a couple of years before that. But you know, it has Question, Old School Hollywood, you know, BYOB. I mean, they're political. There's profanities, of course. A lot of, you know, experimental kind of, you know, crazy, you know, sections. But they never seem to lose the sight of the song, though. That's what I love about System of a Down. They're experimental, but also great songwriters. Of course, there's the whole controversy between Serge and Darren. You know, people don't like Darren's vocals. I like him. I mean, I don't want him singing the majority of the songs, but of course, Toxicity, the title track, is one of the go-tos. Aerials is another one that was a single on this record. This was a big deal when it came out. You know, I mean, they were comparing them to Faith No More and everything. You know, it's like I don't like them as much as Faith No More, but it's kind of splitting hairs. I mean, I think they kind of took over for Faith No More when Faith No More was gone, or you know, and sort of doing that sort of experimental metal. I mean, I don't think they're really new metal. I mean, a little bit they have a punk element in them to a point, but they have, again, they have Zappa-isms. They'll throw in little funny snippets and, you know, and I mean, Tony Danza cuts in line. So that's it for the S's. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed, but thank you for subscribing recently, and we'll see you next time.